Round two underway out east. The Miami Heat take care of business. In the absence of Joel Embiid, Philadelphia just couldn't fill it up enough. 106-92 is your final as the Heat come away with the convincing 14-point win. Did get spotty there heading into the half. Philly even holding a lead momentarily, but down the stretch, simply too much depth. And that depth led by the bench. Tyler Hero, 25 off of Pine, and leading the way in the Game 1 win. All right, let's get our guy in the mix, Bill Reiter, here to break it down, our NBA insider. Bill, sort of played out the way we could have expected it to. Philly did show signs of life there in the first half. We're going to dig into it all here, but general reaction out of Game 1 is what?
Yeah, Joe, you said it. This is exactly what we expected. No Joel Embiid meant very little offensive output from that Sixers team, and we already knew this, but it was a good reminder. This Heat squad are remarkable defensively. It's a Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra production. That means you've got to have guys like James Harden create offense, create opportunities, fight through a Miami squad that knows how to shut you down. They couldn't do that, and at least for one game, I know it's a long series, Miami didn't just win this thing. They looked utterly and totally dominant.
You know, Miami is such a complete team. They bring a comprehensive effort both sides of the court, Bill, but when we're talking about winning teams, championship-type teams, they usually do something better than everyone else. What does Miami do better than everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things, and one of them is not particularly sexy or interesting. It's not easy to talk about on television or radio, but they have a remarkable culture. That's a real thing. I can speak to this as a guy that covered this team back in the LeBron years. Every single guy in that squad knows what they're about, know what their role is, buy into that role, or else you go somewhere else. And that calm, I think is what it is, Joe, under pressure, that ability to just know what your job is gives them such an advantage over teams that are full of so much drama, including the Sixers. And I'll throw in the fact that they really are historically, and this season, exceptional defensively. So you throw in Tyler Hero, gets you some buckets. Jimmy Butler, we know, can go supernova in the postseason. It makes you pretty dangerous.
Not to bring up old skeletons here, but it's a team that was at odds coming down the stretch of the regular season, and they just find their footing. That was never a problem. And here they are with the 1-0 lead over the 76ers. We got to do your favorite thing here, and that's go bad on James Harden. We thought maybe we would get old school, unfiltered Harden, straight no chaser, dribble drive, chucking up threes off the step back. Instead, he gets 16 points on 13 shots. Wasn't all that effective in facilitating either. I believe just 5 assists in the game. Are we well past the days of James Harden putting a team on his back and winning one?
It's funny you say that. I loved James Harden. The old James Harden was one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA. And what struck me today, Joe, and we've talked about this, but I sort of vocalized it to myself. I was actually sitting on my couch and like a strange person talked to myself out loud and said, oh my gosh, this guy's no longer good at basketball. Certainly not great. And you just referenced some of the reasons. The truth of the situation is, and this is on Daryl Morey, it's on Doc Rivers, it's certainly on James Harden. It's a problem for Joel Embiid when he comes back in this series, and for Sixers fans, without Joel Embiid, with no Embiid on the floor, and certainly that's true for the first 2 games, there's no superstar on this team. There's no star on this team. Tobias Harris isn't that, Maxey isn't yet, and James Harden, who we thought would fill that void, is just not that level of a player. He is a really good role player. He is a guy that used to be an exceptional star who can get some buckets at times, but you said it. He looked off timing-wise. He couldn't shoot. He wasn't that involved in the offense. He didn't take enough shots. The shots that he took, he didn't make enough of those. This is not the old James Harden. That is obviously a very big problem for Philadelphia.
You know me, I'm waiting on the Tobias Harris game. This could have been it, 27 points, although in a loss. Bill Reiter, I knew I could get one out of you there. Let's move things forward here, because if you step back from it and you're Philadelphia, say, hey, we take one in Game 2 and it's 1-1 heading back to our place with the big man maybe waiting in tow. How do they get that done? How do they make it 1-1? How do they steal one in the days to come here in Miami?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the message Doc Rivers is almost certainly giving those guys right now and giving them over the next few days, which is, guys, we don't have Joel. We think he's going to be back. It's all gravy. The pressure's on them. Let's go in Game 2 and get a win. But unfortunately, Joe, for me, look, can Tobias Harris be a really important player? Absolutely. Can Maxey be a guy that steps in and scores some buckets? 100%. But in a Game 2 that will not have Joel Embiid, you have to have James Harden, in my opinion, in the opinion of several sources, scouts, GMs around the league I've talked to, take over the game. Play like James Harden of the old MVP years in the regular season and sometimes in the postseason. And I just got done telling you, I don't think that he's that guy anymore. Now, prove me wrong, would love to see it, but that's what Philadelphia needs, because the reality is that Miami wins a lot of these games where they grind it out and they play defense, But we saw in the first round of the playoffs, we saw down the stretch, that Miami can win games 130 to 125 if they have to. So even if you get help from, say, Tobias Harris, you need somebody else because Miami's going to have the ability to adjust because Eric Spoelstra's the best in the NBA doing that from a coaching perspective. And Jimmy Butler, who didn't have a lot of points, can become a scorer if he needs to if the game's less defensive.
Yeah, just 15 points, crashing the boards with 9 rebounds in this game Jimmy Butler had. We've talked about it in weeks past here throughout the playoffs, Miami's ability to win in different ways, as you just allude to. Any tweaks between game 1, game 2? What's Coach Spo going to want to see done differently in game 2?
Yeah, I mean, you saw in terms of what Eric Spoelstra had to deal with, Doc Rivers throwing a whole bunch at that Heat squad, including a lot of zone. He'll make the adjustments. They're probably going to want to be a little more efficient and not letting that Philly team get into some runs. That run that you mentioned at the end of that first half was largely about Miami not operating and running its offense effectively. That's something Spoelstra will address. So I think for the Heat, it's just about we were really good. Let's be great the entire game. Let's be more consistent, not give away easy turnovers, not take bad shots. This is a Philly team I think Eric Spoelstra will tell his guys that we're superior then, especially with no Joel Embiid. The only way we lose is we beat ourselves. Let's shore some of those things up.
Bill Reiter, nobody better in the business, breaking it down here on HQ. Thank you, my friend. All right, let's take a look at that series schedule. One more in Miami before we head back to Philly. Circle these games, put them in your planner, and join us pregame because we hand out free game each and every day. Kenny White, prior to this one, gave you the game under the total. Check. Gave you the first half under. Check. Gave you Philly catching the points in the first half. Check. Gave you Harden under his player prop, a perfect 4 for 4 out of the Wizard of Oz. You want to win? Win with us.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.